we'll just today's daf is daf nun beis, and what's today's going to be an interesting daf. We'll just we'll have some interesting points which are worth to remember. So here we go. We're in the middle of the discussion over here of Maimer. So just briefly, the Torah told us that that in order to consummate a Yibam marriage, you need to have be intimate with her, with the lady. So the Gemara. So we saw that Chazal, the Rabbanan, made an enactment that if you give her kedushin, that's enough. If you give her a ring, and actually we're going to learn today that they required you. They didn't want you to jump into being intimate with your brother's wife. They wanted first a kedushin, maimer. That's called maimer, saying hareyat mukadeshus li, something like that, to the yavama. So how strong is that yavama? How strong is that? So Beis Shammai said, we left off that Beis Shammai was of the opinion that we're going to learn a lot of people hold it strong, but Beis Shammai is the most strict opinion. He holds that midoraisa it works, not just midrabanan. In fact, as soon as a person does maimer according to Beis Shammai, as soon as you do maimer, that's it. It's end of story. You don't need, it's like you did Yibam already. You don't need Chalitza anymore. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai. Okay, we're going to learn just three more opinions over here. Hi, we're starting from Nun Aleph Amud Beis, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, about 12 lines from the bottom, Rab Shimon. The Rab Shimon is another opinion that hold Maimer has power, and then we'll end the sugya over here. The Tanya we learned in a Braisa, Amalu Rab Shimon LaChachamim. Rab Shimon says to Chachamim, in the following scenario, you have a woman falling to Yibam, and there's two brothers there that potentially could do Yibam. The problem is that they are under bar mitzvah. So one of them had relations with this Yavama, and the second one had relations with the Yavama. So the Chachamim said that when the kids grow up, they should give Chalitza. No one can marry this Yavama. But Rab Shimon said, because really, what status is the intimacy of somebody who's 9 years old? What status is it? It's not like he could acquire something because he's under bar mitzvah. So Rab Shimon is of the opinion we have to examine it. If you hold that the child that's doing bia, that's being intimate, is that koina, so then the first brother got the yavama. The second brother that did bia also didn't do anything because the lady right now belongs to the first brother. And if the first brother's relations is counted as nothing, then the second brother's relations is counted as nothing. That's what he said. So Amalu Rab Shimon, and bias rishon bia sheni ain't bia. If the first brother's bia, you consider it as if he's kaina, so then the second brother's bia is not worth anything. In bias rishon ain't a bia, but if you can say the first one is in anything is not worth anything, then bia sheni name ain't a bia, then the second one is nothing. So basically, Rab Shimon held that you always look at the first brother, or you don't look at anybody. So, and that's like Maimer. Bias ben teisha de Maimer shavir rabbanim v'kom Rab Shimon ain't a bia. Bias of a 9-year-old is like rabbanim, is like Maimer. It's the same idea. It's only rabbanim these things work. And Rab Shimon says it's not a bia. It's not because the second one is not a bia. So basically, Rab Shimon concurs with Rabbi Gamliel's opinion that when the Rabbanan were Masakin Maimer, it either works 100% or it works like nothing. It doesn't work at all. So that's Rab Shimon's opinion. Ben Azai is similar. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, right? Ben Azai yesh maimer acham mamer. You can do one maimer after another maimer. B'shnei yavam yavam achas. If you have two men and one yavama, ben mama acham mamer b'shnei yavamas v'yavam echad. So this means this following case, which we saw yesterday. You have Reuven dying, right? We saw this in the Mishnah. Reuven dies. She leaves over Leah. Shimon does maimer, and then Levi, the other brother, does maimer. So Rabbi Ben Azai said that both Levi and Shimon are now considered as if they're married to Leah. Of course, they have to give chalitza. She can't marry both of them. So they're going to have to give a chalitza in this scenario, but they're both going to be usher on the relatives of Leah. In other words, Leah's mother. If Levi or Shimon decides to marry Leah's mother or sisters, they can't do it. It's called like a choisishtoi. So we see that would be according to the opinion of Chachamim. But Levi holds in this scenario, we will say ein maimer achar maimer, which means that in this case, we have two ladies and one brother, and he did maimer on the first lady. The maimer is so effective on the first lady that if he does maimer on the second tzara, he's not going to be usher on the relatives. So that's Levi is also of the opinion of Ben Azai is also the opinion of Rabbi Gamliel. And Rabbi Nechemi is the same way. The Tanam we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Nechemi oime achas be'ila v'achas chalitza bein betchila bein be'emetza bein betzoif ein achareha kulum. There's nothing that can be done once you do a be'ia, a bila, a chalitza, even if it's a be'ia pesula. While be'ia pesula k'mayim mashav yirabanim v'ktani ein achareha kulum. Be'ia pesula follows a get. That means, as we discussed this yesterday, that there's something called a bia pesula, a frowned upon bia. If you give a get to a yavama, and then you follow it up with a bia, technically, min Torah, you were miyabim this lady, right? You did yibam over here, but it's a bia pesula that chachamim are going to require you to give a divorce and do chalitza. So it's almost like you did maimer, but it's like a maimer. But the Rabbi Nechemia said that if you would give maimer to a third lady over there, if there are three women, the first one you did get, the second one you did bia. If you give maimer to the third lady, it would have no power. So we see that maimer, right, or a get is so powerful that it doesn't follow a bia psula, which is like a maimer, doesn't follow with another maimer. Basically, what you could walk away from this whole discussion is that there are some Tanoim who hold that maimer is super strong in a yibam situation. That's all you could walk away with. And that's Rabbi Gamliel, Beishamai, Ben Azai, and Rab Shimon. Okay, new Gemara. Ketzad, also maimer. Let's go to, we're on Daf, today's Daf Nun Beis Amud Aleph. Here we go. The Gemara says, Ketzad. So the Mishnah said a case which seemed to not relate to get acher get. Our Mishnah's case was if you gave get to one lady, a man died, he left over two wives, and you gave a get to one lady, and then you give a get to another lady. And then it goes on to describe something else. Hi get, acher get who? Why did the Mishnah doesn't describe what a get, acher get who? What is a get following another get? It just goes on to describe something else. This is what the Mishnah says. Get acher get, umayma acher mayma k'da amram. You have the case in your head, and the Bryce has spelled it out for you. A get acher get is this case over here. Reuven dies, leaves over two wives. If Shimon gives a get to one and then gives a get to the second wife, that's called a get acher get. Or if he gives maimer to one and gives maimer to the second one, that's called. But that's not what the Mishnah goes on to explain. The Mishnah goes on to explain yavam echad vivam achad. You're dealing with one. The Mishnah goes to the most simplest scenario. You have one brother and one yavama. How ketzad hatarasim? How do you permit it? How do you let her go free? Also, maimer biyavimtoi. The Mishnah describes if you first did kedushin, then the nos-in-law get. So let's say there's one lady over here, and there's only one brother, and he gave kedushin, and then he changed his mind and gave her a get. So then he can't go back and say, "Oh, I'm going to do bia anymore." No, tzricha hemenech chalitza. The only way this woman goes free is she gets a chalitza. So that's the scenario over here. Okay. Let's go a little bit further over here. And, okay, hold on. Let's go just a little bit further over here. The Gemara says, the Mishnah said, and this is important, Asa maimer uva'al. If you gave kedushin to the Yavama, and then you were intimate with her, harei zu kemitzvasa, that is the appropriate way to do it. Not to jump into having relations with your brother's wife, but rather you should, that seems to imply from the Mishnah that the steps are first you give kedushin, and then you do have relations with the woman. Lema Messiah Leila Rav Huna. Wouldn't this be a support for the Rav Huna's opinion? Damar Rav Huna said, and we discussed this, Mitzvahs Yevama, the way to do Yibam is Mekadesh. You give her a ring or you give her a Kedushin, Va'achar kach boil, and then you're intimate with her. Not like what the Torah says, you just jump into intimacy. We want to do it on a more softer way and have a Kedushin there. So maybe the Mishnah is seeming to say what Rav Huna came up with, which is an Amoira. So the Gemara says, no, from the Mishnah, you don't really see that because maybe the Mishnah says, Ema avzeh k'mitzvasa. The Mishnah is just telling you that that works too. That if you did Kedushin and then Bia, that is also the mitzvah of Yibam, but not that you're only supposed to do that. So the Gemara then asks, if that's not if that's what the Mishnah is saying, Pshita, what's the problem? Why shouldn't it work? There's one woman there, you did a Maimer to her, and you did Kedushin, a Maimer, and then you're doing Bia. Why shouldn't it work? So the Gemara says, I would say like this, Kevin de Omamar, since we learned above, if you do Kedushin with the Yavama, then there's no Yibam anymore. In other words, you can't jump from Kedushin to the intimacy. You know what you're supposed to do? You do Kedushin, give her a ring, and then you have to have a whole wedding. You have to have a chuppah. And then you can do Bia with her. You can't jump into Bia anymore. So v'chala azeh olav, once you did Maimer, you have a responsibility of Zikas Eris and Minasurin. Therefore, Ema, I would have thought, Lav Mitzvah Ka'avid. By doing Maimer, you're now taking away the ease of jumping into Bia. Now you're forcing yourself to have a chuppah and kedushin. You're having a wedding. So I might think you might be losing out on the mitzvah of Yibam. Kamash Malon, no, that also works. That if you give Maimer, you give a kedushin, have a chasana, and then you're intimate with her. And when you're intimate with her, that's when you consummate the marriage with the Yavama. I want to point out something very important, and that is that because the Torah said, and this you're probably not going to realize, because the Torah said that the only way you could be kaina a Yavama is through being intimate with her, that means you have to have Eidim to see the intimacy, to know about the intimacy. Because unlike like a regular Kedushin, all you need is, the chuppah, or they see the yichud, you have Eidim by a wedding by the yichud. Here, the only way you're kind of this woman is through Bia. And therefore, that is the kinyan, so therefore you would need Eidim there. We're going to learn a little bit about that today. Gufa, we learned before. Amar Rav Huna said, mitzvahs yavama mekadesh. First you do Kedushin to set her aside, and then afterwards, Baal, you're intimate with her. But if you did the opposite, you were first right away intimate with her, and then v'asa maimer, and then you gave her Kedushin, kana, it works. So wait a minute, what's the problem? If you just was intimate with her, that's what the Torah says. The Rabbanim made up that you should do Kedushin first. And Baal v'asa maimer, pshita, isn't that simple? I mean, of course it would work. Because you acquired this lady by being intimate with her. That's what the Torah says. So why would I think that if you did Kedushin, it wouldn't work after the Bia? If you did Kedushin, why should they think it doesn't work? Ella, Ema, let us say, you have to change the words. In Ba'al, v'loy maime, if you didn't follow what Chazal wanted you to do, what Rav Huna said, if you actually jumped into the Bia without Maimer, not like what the Rabbanan requested you to do, Kana, it works. So that means you did okay, fine. You didn't follow the directions of the Rabbanan. Frag the Gemara, but Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, loika, there's someone who does that gets Malkus. So the Gemara's thinking is that you should get Malkus Daraisa because you did it wrong. You're Mizana with your brother's wife. So the Gemara says, no, really, Midadraisa, it works. But they would give a person who does that Malkus Mardus Midrabonam. They would give him Midrabonam, they would give him a certain type of Malkus. There's a certain Malkus that's similar, not totally similar to a Malkus Daraisa. In fact, the Rabbanim may have the power to give you more than 40 whacks for doing something like that. Because the Rabbanim give you a whack because you didn't follow the directions. You just right away were intimate with her without Kedushin, you get Malkus. But it's not Midaraisa. Midaraisa, it works. The Rav, the famous Rav, Mangate, he would give Petch or he would give Malkus Man the Mekadesh Babia. If someone gives Kedushin, which you know that you can marry a woman either with Kesef, Shtar, or Bia, being intimate with her. If someone chooses choice number 3, having relations with her, that is not, he would give Malchus in that. And I guess the reason is, again, because you would need to have Adim to see the Bia. Because just like if you Mekadesh with a ring, by the wedding, you have 2 Adim watch you give the ring to the woman. So if you chose not to go that route and choose to be intimate with her, and that's how you Mekadesh a woman, you're going to have 2 Adim to see that, and that's Pritzis. So Rav would give Malchus to somebody who does that. And also Rav would give Malchus Manda Mekadesh Beshuka, somebody who would Mekadesh a woman in the street. In other words, you don't do it in a home. In front of, in Yankee Stadium, he gives a ring to his wife, to his potential bride, and makes Kedushin. So that's Usser. He would give Malchus for somebody. It's a private matter. In fact, in some weddings, like the chuppah, they'll have the bride and groom turn around, not face the crowd. So it doesn't look like they're doing this, being Mekadesh each other like we do, right by the chuppah, in public. And then he Rav would give Malchus Uman the Mekadesh Beloy Shiduchi, somebody who gives a Kedushin to a woman and didn't go on a date. He didn't discuss it matter. He just walks over to a woman. He says, we met on a subway. Here's Kedushin. And she's too embarrassed to discuss. You have to go out and get to know the person. So you'd give Malchus to somebody who just did Kedushin without discussing it with her. And then Uman the Mevatel Gita, Rav would give Malchus. You have to understand, by the way, when Rav was in charge in Bavel, the Jewish people had their own personal government. So the Jewish court system could give Malchus when they decided. I guess they didn't even have an Aguna problem back then. So Rav is in charge, and the Gemara is discussing things that Rav would give Malchus for. Man Mavato Gita. Rav would give someone who sends a get through a shliach and then nullifies it. Well, sometimes the shliach goes and gives it over to the woman, and the husband already nullified it, and the one woman that received it thinks she got a kosher get. So it could lead to mamzerim. So he would give Malchus to somebody who did something like that. Umanda Masama Doagita, somebody who would give information about a get. He just gave a get and tells everybody, I was forced to give it. So that's also he would give Malchus. Umanda Poka Shlucha de Rabbanim, and he would give Malchus to somebody who was rude or assaulted. A shliach to Rabbanim. In other words, if they called you to come to court and you assault the person that's summoning you, so then he would give Malchus to that. And he would give Malchus to somebody to show you Shamta de Rabbana Alei Tloisiyam, that if the court put you in Cherem for 30 days, excommunication, and you just don't care, and you don't come back to Bezdin to ask forgiveness, to release you of the excommunication, you just don't care. So then they would call you in and they would give you Malchus. And then he would give Malchus fascinating thing. Val chasona the doa bebechamoy, and a son-in-law who moves into his in-law's house. What's wrong with that? So it was seen that especially the first son-in-law, there's a crush that the mother-in-law has on the first son-in-law back then. And they were concerned that maybe the mother-in-law will have relations with the son-in-law. So it's not good for a young couple to move into the in-law's house. Now, this you have to understand. This is only in the times of Chazal, where a whole house was basically one room. So you all slept together. So the Gemara asked, the door in, if somebody lives with his in-laws, then you get Malchus. The Cholef loy. But if you just visit your mother-in-law and your in-laws, you don't get Malchus. Guy went to visit his father-in-law and mother-in-law's house. Benagde Rav Sheshes gave him Malchus. He was just visiting. So Gemara says, that case was made him have a daim mechamasik. There was rumors already that he was having secret meetings with his mother-in-law. So Rav Sheshes prohibited him from visiting his mother-in-law. And when he went to visit his mother-in-law, so Rav Sheshes gave him Malchus. In Nerdari, they used to say, they told over the history about Rav, they said it wasn't true. This was Mekule Loimanged Rav. Rav never gave Malchus. Someone who gave Kedushin with Bia and didn't discuss it first. So it had to only one circumstances where Rav gave Malchus. Others go, even if he discussed it, bishum pritzose. He would give Bia with shidduch, even if you discussed it, anytime you did kedushin with bia, then intimacy, then Rav gave malchus. Other than that, he never gave malchus, and therefore Taisa says that's why today, since Rav, according to Nerdoi, Rav wasn't so strict about moving in with your mother-in-law. Today we saimich on that you have young couples that move in with their mother-in-laws. But I said it could be even the ones that held that he did give malchus is because it was a different setting back then. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Ketzad Mamar. What is called Mamar? What does it mean Mamar to a woman, to a Yavama? So this we discussed. Nasun lo kesef or shvei kesef. You gave her a kesef or a ring, and you tell to the woman, Hareyat you Yavama, you're a mekudush to me, right? That's what he says. That's what he says. Rashi says. That's right. B'shtar ketzad. How do you mekadosh a Yavama with shtar? Kidamran, like you do by a regular kedushin. Kosav law ala nayor ala cheres. You write on a piece of paper or on a back of an envelope or something, a chart. Alpha pisha ain by shuab approved, even if it's not worth anything. Harayat mekudeshes li. You write up a little piece of paper. Harayat mekudeshes li. That works. So that's obvious that it's worked. So the Gemara is at a question. Why are you asking this question? B'shtar ketzad. Omar Abai explained. Hachi comment. This was the question. Star ksubas yavaman ketzad. The ksuba of a yavama. How do you write it up? So cost of law. So you write it. The answer is a ksuba. Really, a husband's supposed to pay for. But since this woman is not really, he was forced upon this guy by his brother dying. Now he's forced to marry this person. So the shtar. How do you write it up? So it's different because the money comes from the deceased husband. So this is what you write. Ano ploni ba ploni. I so and so. Kabelis yas plonis yivimti. I'm accepting upon himself my Yavama, this lady that's going to be my Yavana, Lozin Ulfana Sakurai, to support her and give her and feed her like appropriately. But she takes Subasa and Nixi Balirishan. The only exception is that if we divorce or I die, she gets the ksuba from the possessions of her first husband because she's not my real wife. I'm forced into marrying her. So the ksuba is paid for by the possessions of the estate of the first husband. The less lomarishan. Let's say the brother died and he left over no estate. Then the yavam has to pay the ksuba. It should be easy to divorce her. You should think twice about getting her. If he gets rid of her, because that's the whole point of a ksuba. You should not have it so easy. It'll cost you money to divorce your wife. So boimene abaya merabah. Abai asked a question for Rabbah, a new question. We know that if you give a get to your Yavama, you give a get. You didn't do chalitza yet. You gave a get. Automatically, you can't do Yibam anymore. You have to do chalitza. So the Gemara describes a question, Nasan lo get. If you give a get, va'amar, and you say, Hareyat, you gave her a posel a get by Yavama. You say, Hareyat mukureshes meni, you divorced from me, but you can't marry anybody else. Such a crazy type of get, mahu. So what would be a din by Yavama? Since this type of get wouldn't work in a regular marriage situation, so it shouldn't work by Yavama either. Get Yavama d'Rabbanu. The whole concept of a get taking effect by Yavama is only midrabanan. So the Rabbanan only said, get the mahani be'ishes ish, a get that would work by a normal marriage, mahani be'yavama, can work by yavama. Get the loy mahani be'ishes ish, loy mahani be'yavama. Get that wouldn't work with the ishes ish, would not work by yavama either. So that's fine. Or in this case, it wouldn't work by a regular ishes ish because it's not a get that's written correctly. A get's supposed to free you to marry anybody. Or dilma asla. Maybe even if it looks like a get and smells like a get, this would be a problem in Yavama if he gave such a get. Amalei, so Rabbi answers, we're concerned that maybe people will think that that this get is no problem, then any get that you give to a Yavama is not a problem. So therefore, even this get would prohibit the Yavam to take her as a Yavama. He would have to give Chalitza. Maskef lo Rabba Balchonon Elama'ata. If that's the case, you're always concerned about a smell of a get already spoils the whole Yibam problem. Yovlo Niyara Be'alma, If you just gave a woman a piece of paper, hachiname de psala, would it also be the case that now this woman is puzzled, you can't do yibum anymore if you gave a piece of paper? Answers the Gemara, Amalei. So Rabbi answered, no, there's a big difference. When you give a get that's not written properly, so at least that woman that receives the get is not free, but if she does become free, let's say her husband dies, she can never marry a kohen. So therefore, that type of get is problematic in Yevama. Amalei, Hossam, a regular piece of paper, when you give a woman a piece of paper, a man gives his wife a piece of paper, loy pasa bakuna, she doesn't become disqualified from marrying a kohen. If the husband dies, she could marry a kohen. Hochab, in the case of a get that's written, hareyat mugreshes, but you can't marry anybody else, since it smells like a get, kapasul bekahuna, then it passes the woman from every marrying a kohen. She got a pasul get, she cannot marry a kohen. The Tanya, we learned in the Brayshah, isha grusha mi isha lo yikacho, a kohen can't marry a divorced woman. Afilu lo niskarsha el mi isha, even if it was such a type of divorce that she was not permitted to marry anybody else, but she's separated from her husband. Lo yikacho, he can't marry such a woman. That's the smell of a get. That type of get, that a puzzle a get, but it's still called a get. So then that type of get, if you give in a Yavama situation, it would prohibit it would puzzle the whole Yavama, and the only thing you can do in such a scenario is do chalitza. Amar Rabbi Bachama continue. Harei Amru, that we have a rule. Amru echad lelavar. Someone said to a sofer, he gave kedushin to a woman. Listen to this. And he gave kedushin. Now, he didn't go to the wedding yet. He just gave kedushin to the woman. He write, kasoiv get la rusase. Right now a get, and the get should take effect, l'shechanasena agarshena. It should take effect that as soon as I have chuppah, then the get should take effect. Wow, what a guy. So he's going to go to the wedding, and then right afterwards, hand her this get that was written when she was in Arusa. Harei beget. That's a good get. They should be under the garsha, because he can make the divorce start right now because he gave her kedushin. Except he's pushing it off that it should only take effect later. B'di'evet, such a get is kosher get. Now, uliisha ba'alma. Let's go. We go to Amud Beis. Uliisha ba'alma. Guy was not did kedushin to the woman. He actually he didn't. He wasn't even related to the woman yet. And he says, write a get, and then I'm going to give kedushin to the woman, and the get shechal. Well, the get was written at a time where he couldn't be megarish the woman because he didn't do kedushin yet. So then ein get. Because when he's writing the get, he can't make the get be effective right now because he's not married to her. So in other words, a get has to be written up at a time that you could give the divorce right now. You could give the get right now. You could write it up now in order for it to take effect later on. But if you're not married to the woman, writing a get to a woman that you're not even married, and then when you marry her, that get is a pasul get. So now you can see where this all leads into Yavama. Rabbi Bechama asked a question. If a guy writes, he didn't do any knisa. A guy has a Yavama. So she is now falling to Yibam. He has to do Yibam to her, or he has to give her a chalitza. He wrote a get. And then let's say he does Yibam to her. What's the din? Kivan de agida bay. So since he's connected to her, karusase dami, that's like an arusa. So he can write a get even before he does anything with this woman. It should take place. It should have an effect for later on after they're married. So that could work. Dilma, since Kavan de loy over bamamar lot, maybe since you didn't do mimer, you didn't do kedushin to her, that's like writing a get to a woman you're not even married to. And in a case where you didn't even do anything to the woman, writing a get at that time would not be a kosher get. Teiku. So the Gemara says this is unresolved. Boya Rab Chanina. Rab Chanina asked the question. A guy did mimer, okay? He did mimer. He has one lady. He did mimer. What's the next step? He should be intimate with her, right? And go to chuppah and kedushin. He should go to chuppah and then have bia. Instead, kosav get lizi kosoi v'loy lemamore. He wrote a get that this get should only, separate the zika, the bonding, but not the mamore. That's what he wrote in the get. Or the mamore, he said it should work for the mamore and not for the zika. So he divided it. So basically, he's making a get for half a woman, because this woman has two parts that connects into the yavam. One is the zika, the bonding, the natural bonding before he does anything. She's falling to yibum to the brother. And then, on top of that, he made a mimer. He made her a kedushin. So she has two things that are connecting him to this man. So to the yavam. But when he wrote the get, he said it should only work halfway. Mama, what's the din? Because again, if it's a get, then he can't follow it up with a marriage. So mamar ilave zika karame is mamar on top of the zika. So therefore, it's like giving a divorce to a half a woman. But if you megarish a half a woman, it's as if you did anything. So maybe you could marry, you can divorce a half a woman, each one separately. And what's the difference? What would be the difference if you just made a divorce on the mimer or not the zika, or the zika not the mimer? So Rashi explains that if you wrote the get for the zika, not the mimer, so then you basically wrote a get for the entire zika, and this lady is also not only on him but any other brother, because once you write a get for the zika, for the bonding, so then you have an isser. Once you choose not to build up, not to do yibam with this woman, so that's like a chalitza. Nobody can do yibam with this lady. But if you're writing the get for the mimer, but not for the zika, so then you're saying my bonding, my personal bonding, the yavam's personal bonding with this woman should walk away with a get, but not the overall bonding to the other brothers. So in that case, she would only be usher to the brother that did the mimer, but maybe the other brothers can decide to do yibam with her. So that is the question. So the Gemara says, the tifsale midrava the amarava nasan get l'mamorei hutu tzarasei. So the Gemara says that you could learn, if you study what Rava said, from Rava you could learn, and Rashi brings the case, I'm not going to go into it, that from Rava, if you study what Rava said, he holds that you could separate a get and make it into two parts. For the get for the zika, not the mimer, or for the mimer, not the zika. So the Gemara says, like it always says, Rava pshitale. Rava, this was a simple case that it can be done. The Rab Chanina Babayle, Rab Chanina asked the question, and he was left with teku. He didn't know if you paskin like Rabba or not. Like Rava said that you could separate it, or maybe you can't separate it, and that you can't divorce a half a woman. Teku, the Gemara beliefs by Kasha. Okay, another 2-3 minutes, and we'll just discuss just the Mishnah a little bit. Cholatz v'osa maimer. Let's say a person did chalitza again, and then you mekadesh the woman, right? You took a woman, you gave her chalitza, and you do maimer. The Mishnah says that it has no effect. You can't mekadesh the woman that you did chalitza. Amar Rav Yehud. Now, to mekadesh a woman that you did chalitza, it's only a prohibition. It's not a chorus or mises pesdin. The Torah says, once you choose lo yivna, not to build her, not to marry her, you can't do it. You don't get a second chance with her. So the Torah gave you a prohibition. So and we see that if you do it, it doesn't take effect. So who's that author? Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, Zu Divrei Rabbi Akiva. This is the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. The Amar, who said, Ein kedushin toivsin b'chayav lavin. A chayav lav, kedushin doesn't take effect. So any type of chayav lav, which this is a lav, it's not you don't get misa or kares if you do it, but kedushin, you just would get a lav. And nevertheless, we see that the Mishnah holds kedushin wouldn't work. Chachamim say, yesh acha chalitza klum. It's possible to give kedushin even after chalitza. It's possible. It would take effect. It's almost like a kohen marrying a divorcee. The kedushin will work. But that's what the chachamim. It's you're going to be over a lav. So the Gemara says, so you just assume that our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Akiva. So the Gemara asks the question, Rabbi Akiva, can you say our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Akiva? Well, Ketani Reisha, the beginning of the Mishnah says, Nasan get, if a person gives a get, Ba'asa Maimer, and then he did Maimer, right? So then, Sricha get, the Chalitza. You need a get for the Maimer, and then a Chalitza to break the whole Zika. Rabbi Akiva, but if you go according to Rabbi Akiva has another opinion. Kivin diav lev gittin, as soon as you give a get to a woman, a yavama, mimahani b'maymer, you cannot make a kedusha. Vatanya, we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Akiva oimer, menayin lenoisen get liyavimtish nesra oil of oilamas. If you give a get to your yavama, right? You didn't do chalitza, you just give a get, you can never do kedusha with her. Shenamar, pasuk says, lo yuchal ba'al rishon asher shilcha. And there's an extra word that once you give someone a get, you can't marry her again. So asher shilcha is in a specific case, acha shilua, a woman, your brother's wife that fell to yibam, as soon as you give a get, even if you didn't do chalitza, Rabbi Akiva is of the opinion that once you give a get, you can't just do a kedushin to follow up that. It wouldn't take effect. So how could our Mishnah says that if you give a get and you give maimer, you need you did a maimer, which is kedushin, you need a get for that maimer. According to Rabbi Akiva, the get wouldn't work. So our Mishnah's author is not Rabbi Akiva. And says the Gemara, Omar Rav Ashi, technically it would work. Get Yevamim midraban. The fact that a get works by Yevamim is draban. The Torah only said chalitza works, not a get. Rabbi Akiva said kedusha will never work. That's just a smachta ba'alma. The pasuk is just a smachta. It really would taka work. Even Rabbi Akiva would agree to work. He's just bringing you a pasuk to tell you that it shouldn't work. On theory, it shouldn't work, but technically it does work because get is only usher. Get is only works midrabanan. Really, the zik is still in effect, and therefore maimer would work, and therefore you would need a get for the maimer and a chalitza to absolve this whole thing. Okay, Tanya Nami Hachi, we just a little further. Tanya Nami Hachi, Omer Rebbe. Rebbe says, Ein hadvar malola amurum ela divrei Rabbi Akiva. The fact that who's of the opinion that says that after you give chalitza, kedushin doesn't work on this lady, that's Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Sha'oisa chalutza ke'erva. He would make like a chalutza, like an erva, just like you can't give kedushin to your mother, so you can't give a kedushin to your chalitza. Ava Chachamim says chalutza would work. It's different. For your mother, you can't give kedushin to. Ava yesh acha chalitza klum. It's possible to do chalitza, possible to give kedushin after you give chalitza. Va'ani oimer, says Rabbi, and this is Va'ani oimer, I say, Amasai, when does that work? Bisman shekitchel l'shem ishus. Ava kitchel l'shem yabus ein acha chalitza klum. And Rabbi just says like this, that if you gave chalitza to a woman and then you go give kedushin to her, right? So then if you tell her, I'm giving you kedushin as if you were not, as if I don't know you and you should be my wife. So then it could work. But if you tell her while you're giving her the kedushin that let's do yibam, so the kedushin, she's thinking that she's doing yibam now. And therefore it's a mistaken, it's called a kedusha taris. You're fooling her to make kedushin. So then it doesn't work. If you mekadosh the woman, tell her we're doing yibam now, then she's fooled because she already got a chalitza. Then it doesn't work. That's what Rebbe just qualified. Let's just read just one more line. Tanya idach the same idea. Person gave chalitza to his yabama. The chaz of a kitchen then goes mekadosh her. Rebbe says, in kitchen l'shem ishus, if you give a kedushin, telling you, I'm marrying you, tzricha and a get. The shib yab, you need a get from her, because the kedushin would work. The shib yabmus, but if you tell her, I'm right now doing yibam with her, wait a second, you did chalitza, so you're fooling her by saying, now we can do yibam again. So then, that kedushin doesn't take an effect, because you fooled her, and kedushay tois doesn't work. Ain't tzricha men a get. You don't even need a get. She could walk away from the whole thing. Chacham says, bein shekitchel l'shem ishus, bein shekitchel l'shem yabmis, tzricha men a get. Whether you do kedushin l'shem ishus, whether you give it for yabmis, it always works. As soon as you give chalitza, you could turn around and give her kedushin, albeit you're over a lav, but kedushin would work. And now the Gemara is going to discuss what's the reason of Rebbe and why did the Rabbanan hold in all circumstances. Even if you told her that I'm mekadosh you to be a yibam, you'll still need a get. Okay, so such ends today's share.